I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight about Jason. His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. Legend has it that Jason saw his mother beheaded that night, and that he took his revenge. A revenge that he'll continue to seek if anyone ever enters his wilderness again. Always on the prowl for intruders. Ready to kill. Ready to devour. Thirsty for young blood.
Oh, fuck me, shit! You scared the shit out of me!
Spooky gang, what's going on? Welcome back to Terror of Tech. I hope y'all having a blessed day. And if it's your first time visiting the channel, go ahead, smash that like button and click that subscribe button. We're on the road to 1K subs. We just crossed over 300 subs, so definitely shout outs to y'all. Appreciate all the love. Got more horror bangers on the way. Y'all already know how I do. We definitely trying to hit 1K subs by the end of the year. So y'all continue to show your boy some love. And it will mean a lot ultimately as the channel grows. So for today's video, we're talking about horror movies that are based on true stories. There's a lot of movies out there that are based on true stories, and in a lot of cases, when a lot of those movies are done well, tend to be a little more creepy than your average horror movie, in my opinion, because now, of course, a lot of these movies are dramatized and, you know, they add in different elements and scares and some things that never happen. But of course, you're making a movie. So in making a movie, you have to add different things that'll make whatever the story was more entertaining and something that somebody would want to keep coming back to watching. And ultimately, it adds an extra layer of fear to the audience. So without further ado, we're going to jump into some of these movies that are based on true stories. And starting out, number one, we're going to talk about The Conjuring. Most horror fans are very familiar with Ed and Lorraine Warren. You know, in real life, they were demonologists or supernatural investigators, especially around the 70s and the 80s. That's when a lot of their most famous cases were. And one of those cases was from the Perron family that we see featured in the movie The Conjuring. The film follows paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren as they assist the Perron family, who are experiencing increasingly disturbing events in their farmhouse in Rhode Island. And this is a true story. The Perron family claimed that their house was haunted by multiple spirits, most notably being a witch, Bathsheba Sherman. This family, they experienced strange noises and different disturbances, objects moving around on their own. And it's noted that they said they've experienced, sightings of different ghostly figures. And what made this movie a huge success coming off of a real life story like this is their level of acting. All the characters are really good. All the girls, they make the situations and experiences that they had, they made it feel so real and so as if they were truly experiencing it. So that's where acting goes a long way. And then just a lot of creative scares. Me personally, I've always been a big fan of like those haunted house type movies. Always been a big fan of those. This movie doesn't fail in really any aspect. Storyline great, scares great, score, music, and obviously you see the poster right back there. So yeah, banger of a movie, and if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch that. In my opinion, it's probably one of the best 25-ish horror movies of all time, from front to back. Definitely a movie you should check out. And while we're talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren, we might as well jump into another one of their most infamous cases, which is the case with Annabelle. The Conjuring partially has Annabelle in it, and they made an Annabelle movie in 2014. But essentially, with the plot of Annabelle, the film centers on a couple who begins experiencing terrifying supernatural occurrences involving a vintage doll shortly after their home is invaded by people in a satanic cult. Now, as far as the real life story, the doll doesn't look as creepy as it shows in the movies, of course. The doll that was considered haunted in this case is actually a Raggedy Ann doll, and the people who owned the doll claimed that, it would move around on its own and write different things, just do different things that were just like really disturbing to them. And that's where Ed and Lorraine Warren came in, and That's where they were able to determine that the doll was possessed by some form of an inhuman spirit. And from that point, that's where they locked the Annabelle doll. And the actual Annabelle doll is still in its case for no one to ever touch it, nobody to ever open it. Just leave it wherever it is and keep the evil contained inside. Because the Warren family has like this whole room of all of their different cases, and they have different artifacts from those cases. So they have a big room of all of that where you actually see Annabelle doll. Now, Annabelle as the movie is pretty solid. It's probably, you know, maybe middle of the pack or a little above middle of the pack for the whole Conjuring universe. I highly encourage people to go back and look at some of Ed and Lorraine Warren's cases and their files and different documentaries on them. The next movie that I want to talk about is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This movie came out in 2005. Tells the story of a priest on trial for the wrongful death of a girl named Emily Rose, who he performed an exorcism on. Inspired by the story of Anneliese Michel, she was a German woman who underwent 67 exorcisms in the 70s and eventually died from malnutrition and dehydration. She claimed to be possessed by several demons, and she would exhibit extreme behavior, kind of like, you know, with self-harming, her avoiding certain religious objects, and even speaking in different languages as well. And the cool thing about this movie is it's shot like a trial. You know, as the trial is going on, yeah, we'll have flashback scenes so we can actually see the different things that Emily had to endure. Like, you know, throughout the trial, you know, both the prosecution and the defense presents their cases. The prosecution argues that Emily's death was due to her being untreated for medical conditions, while the defense, you know, the priest and led by his attorney, Aaron Bruner, presents evidence suggesting that Emily was genuinely possessed and that Father Moore acted in her best interest. And the movie is just so good. The movie is just so good overall. I don't want to spoil everything for it, but like I mentioned in the intro, yes, some aspects are going to be dramatized. Because the movie's shot like a trial, it gives it that authenticity. It makes it feel real. Definitely a good movie. The next movie that I want to talk about is the infamous Amityville Horror. This movie came out in 1979, and it's based off the true story of the Lutz family, who experienced different supernatural occurrences in their home based on the family that lived there before, the DeFeo family. And for people who aren't familiar with that story, Ronnie DeFeo killed his entire family in that house, and he said that his influence and what drove him to do that was the devil. There was a huge case in the 70s based on this, and it's still very controversial to this day. There's a lot of people that actually believe that he truly was under the influence of the devil or a demon. And then there's the group of people that still are a little skeptical. Considering this is one of the most famous paranormal cases recorded ever, really. The Lutz family will report different things like strange odors, the walls oozing green slime like it's SpongeBob or something.
And the walls will ooze green slime! Oh, wait, they always do that.
The next movie that I want to talk about is The Haunting in Connecticut. With this movie, the film follows the Campbell family as they move into a house near a hospital where their son is being treated for cancer, only to discover that the house has a dark past and is haunted. And this movie is based on the true story of the Snedeker family, who moved into this home that they eventually find out what once was a funeral home. But over the course of time, the family started seeing different apparitions and hearing strange noises, and they also mentioned feeling physical attacks from unseen forces. He starts having hallucinations of supernatural entities and flashbacks to like bizarre rituals and things of that nature. And as time went on, these experiences became more frequent and more intense at that. They also had a sequel to this, Haunting in Connecticut 2. They're a pretty solid 1-2 punch for sure. Another movie that I wanted to talk about is Wolf Creek. This movie came out in 2005, and this movie was inspired by the real-life murdering several backpackers, you know, people who were, you know, doing camping and backpacking in the 1990s. So with the movie Wolf Creek being based on that, begins with a road trip with Liz, Christy, and Ben. You know, they end up running into car trouble, and they meet this guy named Mick Taylor, and this Mick Taylor offers to help them out and, you know, tow their car back to his camp. And when he gets them all back to the camp, that's when the movie gets juicy. So I'm not gonna spoil anymore, but yeah, this is a good movie and one that you should watch. And the last movie that I want to mention is The Strangers. The Strangers came out in 2008, and it's loosely based on the true story of the Manson family. And if you're not familiar with the Manson family, Google it. There was just a series of break-ins and murders that happened back in like the 60s, like late 60s. But as far as the plot, a couple staying at a remote vacation home who was terrorized by 3 masked assailants over the course of an evening. This movie is widely liked and respected for people who are just afraid of home invasion movies in general. You can't go wrong with a movie like this. For people who like slashers, it checks the box there. For the people who are really big into suspense and the thrill of things, it checks that box there. So no, overall, like it's a well-crafted movie. The movie came out over 15 years ago, so if you still haven't seen it at this point, then I don't know what you're doing. And especially considering recently they've had like 2 new sequels to it. So no, yeah, go ahead, check that out, and don't check out the sequels. I can promise you that much. So just watch the first one and you'll be good. Trust me. But that's all I got for y'all today, Spooky Gang. Y'all comment down below some of y'all favorite horror movies that are based on true stories. Like I told you, there's a multitude of them out there, so I'd be really interested to see what y'all say. We're on the road to 1K subs. We all a big horror family and community. So we got to look out for each other, support each other, because horror doesn't get enough respect in the movie industry in general. A lot of people tend to look at horror movies as these, just cheap, fun little scare movies. But horror movies have so many more layers to it than that. And so for me, it will mean a lot as y'all continue to subscribe, share the channel, and like the videos. And as the Spooky Gang grows, that means that the entire horror community is growing. And we could continue to put horror in a big spotlight. And so that horror gets its respect in Hollywood, and then we get better horror movies, and then we start getting better horror movies year in and year out. And we can stop getting them sorry-ass horror movies in January. So like I said, y'all subscribe to your boy. Road to 1K subs. We definitely gonna hit that thing by the end of the year. Like the video, comment those movies down below, and y'all already know what it is. Until next time, stay spooky.